particular during his work as the permanent representative of Turkey to the UN and a special coordinator of the UN on Afghanistan, and also in his work as in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. We spoke about the situation of the OSCE right now. We have to state that in the recent years, the leadership of the organization, when they pretends not to come to Moscow. The former visit of the OSCE Secretary General, Ms. Schmidt, citizen of Germany, was in June 2021. Later, the Foreign Minister of Poland came to our country, who was the OSCE chairperson in office. He came in the beginning of February 2022. After that, we didn't have any contacts at this level. That is why we do value the decision of the new Secretary General, who didn't have any doubts that speaking to the leading members of the OSCE is very important and obligatory for the leader of the Secretariat. But the consequences of the previous work is not to envy, actually, if we're speaking about Mr. Siniroglu, because the West has banned itself from engaging in dialogue with us, and this ban also expanded to the international organization, which is the OSCE. We had contacts, of course, but not at the level that used to be since the beginning of the signing of the Helsinki Final Act. Such actions of the West that consciously decided to destroy the principle of consensus and did everything to make OSCE refuse consensus and to become a Ukrainized instrument to influence on Russia, resulted in the deepest institutional crisis. During the ministerial meeting of the OSCE in December last year in Malta, we outlined in detail our assessments of the situation. But 50 years ago, when it was still the conference, and then it became the organization, the pan-European process became a unique regional platform, and we remember this today. It became a platform for contact between East and West in the context of the Cold War. As we say, an all-weather mechanism of conversation was created, and the dialogue on all three dimensions, military and political, humanitarian, economic and environmental, didn't stop even in the crisis times. For instance, in 1999, amid barbaric bombings of Yugoslavia by NATO countries, diplomatic work in Vienna didn't stop. However, the foundations for those bombings, all the pretexts for these bombings, had direct connections to the head of the OSCE in Kosovo. So once again, for us, today's visit of Secretary General as a symbolic step in the right direction. As we see it as a return, it's a long way. We want to return to the origins of the organization, and we will help the Secretary General on his way. Today we spoke about the ability of the OSCE in general to adapt to the modern geopolitical realities, to become part of a new architecture of security, and their initiatives not about concerning not only Euro-Atlantic security, but Eurasian architecture, which would be very logical, knowing the geography and the interconnectedness of our big continent. Of course, we would like to renew the principle of indivisibility of security as it was stated at the summit of the OSCE in Istanbul in 1999, and then it was reconfirmed in 2010 during the OSCE summit in Astana, the indivisibility of security and the sovereign equality of states. I hope that the experience, the energy of the OSCE Secretary General will help to move against those efforts that the Westerners are continuing to make to keep using the OSCE in their purposes, ignoring the UN Charter or the principles of the OSCE, trying, as I have already said, to use the resources of this organization in order to help NATO and the EU continue to help to support the Kiev regime, to justify everything, to provide large-scale military and help to this regime and all other kinds of help. Turning a blind eye to gross violations by Kiev of the assumed international legal obligations in the UN and in the OSCE. First of all, we're speaking about the respect of rights of national minorities, human rights in a wider concept. Russian-speaking ethnic Russians living in Ukraine and against Hungarians, Bulgarians, Polish and other representatives, because their rights are being grossly violated. We spoke about how the Ukrainian conflict can be settled. Our position is clear. President Putin has underlined repeatedly that he's ready for negotiations. He stressed the principles that cannot be ignored if we want to settle this conflict. We need to eliminate its underlying root causes. In June last year, it was presented in detail when the President was speaking in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also he spoke about this on February the 12th with the US President Donald Trump. Russian and the US representatives have a very important task to normalize the relations between two great countries, preserving, having all the differences. We need to have a dialogue, and also we are ready to speak about Ukraine with everyone who is sincerely interested in helping us in this. We also spoke that the OSCE has three dimensions. I mentioned them, three baskets. It's been long that these baskets are not functioning very regularly, depriving the participating states of an opportunity to speak about the most important, not the most important issues: the economy, environment, solving humanitarian, social tasks, and of course security. I do hope that the experience of Mr. Siniroglu will allow to depoliticize, or at least start to do it, because it is not a very fast process, to start depoliticizing our organization, to return it to the origins. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank Minister Sergey Lavrov for his invitation to Moscow and for the frank and productive discussions we just had. As Secretary General of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, I am committed, I emphasize, I am committed to working with all 57 participating states. Russian Federation is an OSCE co-founder, and it is a very important partner within the OSCE. I would like to continue to work with Russia on the peace and security for all in Europe objective. This is why I am here. I believe that the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act this year should give us an opportunity to collectively recommit to the Helsinki Declaration and to make full use of multilateral diplomacy and our existing platforms. I believe there is now an opportunity to end the ongoing war in Ukraine, and we must seize it. OSCE is ready to support any settlement should the parties so wish. The OSCE remains a key platform for security dialogue among all its participating states, especially those who need to find a common ground. It is the place to discuss the security architecture, the future security architecture, as all actors relevant to European security are around the table. I reiterate our offer. The OSCE stands ready to support efforts towards ending the war in Ukraine and beyond in any way it can be useful to the sides. This is your organization, and as Secretary General, I am ready to implement what you agree on. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Russia 24. Minister Lavrov, Ms. Zakharova, my first question is to our guest. Today, with your own eyes, you've seen the consequences of the Kyiv regime attack against civilian facilities, and the victims are civilians. We have repeatedly heard condemnation of the OSCE against Russia. Are we going to hear today any kind of declaration condemning the Ukrainian regime? And what do you think? Why the Kyiv regime started attacks right now and choose a specific time for these attacks? So why is this time? I have to ask it because this is the first time you come to Russia. For 4 years there were no representatives of the OSCE in Russia. Is the OSCE representative on the freedom of the speech is going to work fully? Because in the recent years, the OSCE hasn't seen not one killed Russian journalist. And just one more question to the minister. We spoke today about my killed colleagues in the Special Military Operations Zone, and before the DPR and LPR became part of the Russian Federation, did you speak about this during your negotiations?
As I said, this war has brought a lot of pain and suffering to millions of people. I was in Kiev and I saw also similar incidents there. I do hope that we will see very soon the end of the war and we will no longer witness these incidents, neither in Moscow nor in Kiev. Thank you.
If we're speaking about the security of journalists, was discussed in detail. We paid attention to the fact that the representative of the OSCE on freedom of the media follows a poor example of Ms. Azoulay, that in the annual report that is being published on the topic of the security of journalists, didn't even mention the crimes against our civilians, our compatriots that worked as journalists in hotspots. And we made a démarche in the UNESCO. We will do everything to solve this injustice. And we have given the list of journalists to the Secretary General of the OSCE who died when they were performing their work since 2022 till today. And the president of the Union of Journalists of Russia, Mr. Solovyov, wrote a letter to Secretary General. It was an open letter, and we have given the original letter to him today, and we will continue speaking about this insistently. Sputnik, please. Good afternoon. I have a question to the Foreign Minister. Minister, the leadership of the OSCE has repeatedly said publicly that there is no agreed budget of the organization since 2022. At the same time, Russia is being blamed. They are saying that this is the position of one participating state. What is the situation right now with the budget of the organization? Is it true that the OSCE is on the verge of financial collapse? And if it is true, who is to blame? And one more question about Ukraine. The new leadership of the OSCE made its tasks to support Ukraine. And the mandate organization in particularly includes conflict settlement, peaceful conflict settlement. What is the role of the OSCE in solving Ukrainian crisis? And if yes, what it is? If we're speaking about budget, a long time ago, I will not remember when it was, we agreed on the numbers that were in the draft of the unified budget, but we do not agree that the budget documents, that is a pragmatical, technical document, had any political assessments, as our Western colleagues like to do it. And then they blame Russia that it doesn't want to politicize the budget document. That is why it cannot be approved. So it is understandable what we're speaking right now. So we agreed, speaking about the numbers, and we gave it because we wanted to reach consensus. We truly believe that only consensus can save the OSCE. And the West, I don't know what they do believe in itself, maybe only in Satan, but they do everything to destroy consensus so that the OSCE ceased to exist. Because I couldn't find any other way to understand it. We agreed on the numbers of the budget. But there are also other topics concerning democratic, Bureau of Democratic Institutions and human rights that has no criteria in its functioning, despite the fact that for 20 years we have been proposing to agree on such principles. But the West refused to do this, categorically saying that this is a golden standard, that is why they don't want to do anything. With the help of the previous Secretary Generals, with the help of the previous chairs of the OSCE, they made it like that the members of this bureau are NATO and the EU representatives. And unilaterally, they, for instance, choose what will be the format and size of missions to observe observe elections, and they send 300 people to one country and much more to another country. If we're speaking about such countries as Romania, well, the things that are happening, if we're speaking about elections, are absolutely flagrant, and there are no claims to it. That is why we will keep working, trying to reach transparency in the work of all the institutions of the OSCE. But right now, the obstacle to agree on the budget are not us. As for the prospects of the participation of the OSCE in solving Ukrainian crisis, it's been long that the OSCE has working on this. Since 2014 till 2022, there was a special monitoring mission to Ukraine. We have spoken today. What were the claims against it? The claims that have been accumulating. That's lack of desire, for instance, to give detailed information about who is to blame more if we're speaking about destruction of civilian infrastructure and if we're speaking about targeted attacks of ulteriorly against civilians. For 3 years, we have been asking the OSCE mission at the time, in 2019, 2020, to receive the report, not just to give us the number of victims, the number of destroyed houses, but give the numbers on the two sides of the contact line. Because the destruction of the civilian infrastructure on the side of Donetsk was much bigger than on the side of the Kiev regime. And there was also information that very often the part of the Donetsk was just responding to the fire, not starting it. Right now, as I've said, there are many problems that have been accumulated. If we're speaking about the special monitoring mission, the information that was given to the Ukrainian side, gross violation of the principle of neutrality. We don't have such plans. We need to see, because the settlement process hasn't even started. Zelensky is saying publicly that he doesn't want any ceasefire until the Americans give him any guarantees that they will destroy Russia with nuclear weapons. So now it's not serious. Today we spoke about this. There are many proposals to declare ceasefire and to put peace workers there, peacekeepers. And then we could speak about the borders, how to keep living there. Concerning peacekeepers, everyone is speaking about them. Maybe 10,000, maybe 50,000, maybe 100,000. Canada wants to participate in it. What could we do without it? But I was told that these peacekeepers will be guarding what? The remnants of Kiev Nazi regime that has approved a series of laws that destroy Russian culture, Russian language, Russian media, banned the canonical Orthodox Church. And maybe first we will try to stop this Nazi practice of the Kiev regime. First of all, we need to work on this, because otherwise it all looks like an attempt to save of the remnants of this regime from the rage of the population. Russia Today, please. Good afternoon, and I have two questions. The first,
rift in NATO between the US and the EU. What might a new security architecture of Europe look like, especially given that NATO's eastward expansion was the root cause of the Ukrainian conflict?
And another question to Mr. Lavrov. In the context of messages on mass killings and escalation of ethnic conflict in Syria, does Russia have any opportunity to help conflicting parties to find a diplomatic solution and to avoid further bloodshed? If yes, what would be such a solution, and if not, why? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it is not up to me to answer that. It will be up to the participating states to discuss how this war will end and what will be the shape of the future European security architecture after we have an agreement on how to end the war. And that will then determine the future landscape in the vast geography of the OSCE. Thank you.
Знаете, я добавлю.
I'll add, speaking about the European security architecture. There are a lot of talks about this. We have spoken about this. We have spoken about the trends that can be seen. Until recently, Euro-Atlantic concept was dominating. It is presented in the North Atlantic Alliance, in the OSCE as well. And given that the EU has signed an agreement with NATO, has become subjugated to NATO, in fact. So, in fact, the EU as architecture is a part of a Euro-Atlantic concept, but our continent is much bigger than the OSCE, and there is not one pan-continental structure or organization. Africa has African Union, Latin America has the community of Latin American and Caribbean states, but if we're speaking about Eurasia, the biggest continent, the richest in natural resources with the big, enormous potential, speaking about logistics and effective communication concerning transport and others, we don't have an umbrella structure where all the countries of Eurasia would come together. There are many sub-regional structures. Our Eurasian Economic Council, CSTO, SCO, ASEAN, the Council of Cooperation of Arab countries of the Persian Gulf, and many other structures, the Organization of Turk-speaking countries. But there is not an organization where all the countries of the continent could come together. And I paid attention to the fact that several years ago, our NATO colleagues, when there was Biden administration, started speaking that there is an Indo-Pacific region, not Asia-Pacific region, but Indo-Pacific region. It is the region that right now represents special priority for the US, and it was confirmed by Trump administration as well, when he says that the main interests of the Washington are there, in the east of Eurasia, in the Pacific Ocean, and Europeans receive less attention from the US because of this. That is what, because the US is orienting to that region. But even before this current administration, through NATO, the US started moving the concept of the responsibility of NATO for the whole European continent. And the Secretary General of NATO was asked, why are you working so actively in the Indo-Pacific region? Why have you created AUKUS there, the US, Britain, Australia with a nuclear element? Why are you creating different troikas and groups of 4 countries, the US, South Korea, Japan, where they are also going to have exercises with a nuclear element? There are many structures. You are moving their structures that are limited, that are not inclusive. Stoltenberg was asked that NATO is, as it was declared, is a defense alliance. It protects the territory of their member states. And Stoltenberg, without any doubt, said that they keep doing what is necessary to protect the territory of their states, because the threats to these countries come from Taiwan Strait, from South China Sea, from Korean Peninsula. So, there is no pan-continental structure in the sphere of security in Eurasia. That is why NATO have become working to subjugate all the processes in the sphere of security in this enormous continent. It is unacceptable because it undermines the principle of indivisibility of security that is the fundament of the OSCE documents. And I hope that the OSCE Secretary General and his team will keep fighting for the necessity of all the participating states of the OSCE respect what was signed by their presidents. And the final question, Zvezda channel. Mr. Lavrov, first question to you. Recently, former ambassador of Greek to Ukraine published information that the OSCE employees give the Ukrainian armed forces coordinates of our military in DPR and LPR, and after that they are subject to aimed fire. Did you speak about this today, about this so-called cooperation between the OSCE and UAF? And one more question to Mr. Siniroglu. Do you know anything about this information? Was there or will there be an internal investigation? And what can be the punishment of the employees if their guilt is proven? We have discussed this issue. We have given the specific facts. Because it's not only part of public discussion after the declaration of the former ambassador of Greece. We knew about these facts earlier when we were speaking about possible participation of the OSCE, but the possible role of the OSCE in settling Ukrainian conflict. Mr. Siniroglu, well, those who worked in the special military, special monitoring mission, those who worked in this mission violated grossly because they were not working in a transparent way. They were helping one of the conflicting parties, violating their mandate.
Thank you for the question. Of course, I checked the press pieces about this issue with the Greek ambassador first. This person that you have referred has no knowledge whatsoever about the special monitoring mission and its work. So it doesn't look very serious allegations to the Greeks, not to us, but to the Greeks. And I know also from my colleagues who worked at this special monitoring mission as its head that there was no access of monitors to the military areas where they have been monitoring the situation. Thank you.
Я прошу прощения у корреспондента.
The correspondent of RT, I would like to answer another question because there was another question that I didn't answer. Of course, we are concerned about what happens in Syria, concerning the efforts that we are making together with our partners, with the members of the international community. For many years, we've been making these efforts to ensure peace, security of all the political and ethnic and religious groups in this friendly country so that it was free from terrorist threats. And the contacts that we had with the representatives of the new authorities in Damascus have shown that they treat with understanding the signals that they were given. All other their partners in the Arab world, in the West, in the US, in other countries, in India, in China. This outbreak of violence is absolutely unacceptable. And we drew attention of our colleagues during the conversation of Mr. Putin with Mr. al-Shara and during the visit of our delegation to Damascus, headed by Deputy Minister Mikhail Bogdanov, during my meeting in Ankara with the Foreign Minister of the new government, Mr. Shabani. We have given the all necessary assurances and the course for national agreement was confirmed There was the first Congress, the Pan-Syrian National Congress was held. This is the first experience, and maybe it will continue to create a reliable basis of the state to elaborate the constitution. And knowing the events that happened on the coast, of course, that there is no alternative for the approach that will make that all the representatives of the different ethnic, religious groups could participate in this process. Yesterday, even on Sunday in the evening, our representative with the representative of the US made a request to the UNSC to organize urgent consultations, closed consultations, so that it wasn't work for the public. And the consultations were held yesterday, and the Secretariat, the Special Representative of the UNSG for Syria, informed the UNSC members, and now the reaction of the UNSC is being elaborated, and I hope that it will be rapidly published. Is it all? Thank you very much. Thank you for participating in the press conference.